Perhaps you are wondering why I made such a fuss about the accident in the previous video. Well, let's just say that sometimes a little touch of drama helps to grab attention, doesn't it? But putting exaggerations aside, the truth is I'm here to help you learn English, and for that, there's nothing better than a good story, right? Before I continue with my tale, I'd like to ask you a question. How do you think I became a successful lawyer? Was it my intelligence, my dedication, or perhaps just a stroke of luck? The truth is, the road to success is a combination of many factors. In my case, cleverness has always played a crucial role. I've always been observant, analytical, and capable of anticipating others' moves, and that skill, combined with a good dose of persuasion, has allowed me to achieve my goals. But success is not just about winning cases in court. It shows itself in many areas of life, and mastering languages plays a vital role in that. For example, how do you think I managed to close that multi-million pound deal with a French company? Or how I held my own at that international conference in Berlin? The answer is simple. By learning languages, yes. Apart from English, I speak French fluently, as they say. Apprendre une nouvelle langue, c'est comme avoir une seconde vie. Learning a new language is like having a second life. Don't you think that's a fascinating idea? Expanding your linguistic horizons opens up a world of possibilities. It allows you to connect with people from different cultures, explore new ideas, and live unforgettable experiences. In short, it helps you achieve your goals, whatever they may be. And speaking of achieving goals, I vividly remember my first major case. I had just started working at a small law firm in London, a rather dull and mediocre place, run by a man named Bartholomew Bart Cunningham, a fellow with less charisma than a burnt piece of toast and rather questionable ethical standards, to put it mildly. He was the sort of boss who frowned upon any display of weakness and considered women to be inferior beings meant to serve tea and follow orders. One day, an abandoned file appeared on my desk. It was a case of sexual abuse. The victim, a young single mother named Eleanor Ellie Whitaker. With three small children and a desperate financial situation, she was accusing her former boss, one Reginald, Reggie Thornton, a construction tycoon with a reputation as a sexual predator. Thornton was a powerful and ruthless man who used his influence to hide evidence and silence his victims. He had been accused twice before, but had always managed to get away with it. At the firm, no one wanted to touch the case. The evidence was scarce, and Cunningham, with his backward chauvinistic mindset, considered it a waste of time to defend a hysterical woman. But I saw an opportunity to prove my worth, to seek justice, and why not to make a name for myself in the legal world. I met with Ellie, who recounted in heartbreaking detail the harassment and abuse she had endured. Her testimony was compelling, but I needed something more. To take on Thornton and his top-tier legal team, I arranged a meeting with them, determined to negotiate a settlement. But Thornton and his lawyers were arrogant and defiant. They were confident they would win the case and refused to pay Ellie a single penny. It was then that I decided to change my strategy. I needed something more decisive, something that would truly put Thornton against the ropes. So I dived into an exhaustive investigation of his businesses. I spent weeks going through documents, contracts, financial statements, and finally I found what I was looking for. Thornton, through a complex network of shell companies registered in tax havens, had been evading taxes for years. Millions of pounds that should have gone to public coffers ended up in his bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. But that wasn't all. I discovered that Thornton had fraudulently obtained construction permits for a luxurious residential complex in a protected area on the outskirts of London. He had council officials, forged environmental reports, and threatened anyone who stood in his way. Obtaining this information wasn't easy. I had to rely on contacts in the financial world, some of them rather shady, to put it mildly. I even infiltrated an exclusive party hosted by Thornton, pretending to be an investor interested in his projects, a risky move, but I needed irrefutable evidence to confront him. With the evidence in hand, I met with Thornton and his lawyers once again. This time, my tone was different. There were no pleas, no negotiations. I showed them the documents, the bank transfers, the incriminating emails, and I made it clear that if they didn't come to an agreement with Ellie, I wouldn't just sue him for sexual abuse, but also expose him for corruption and tax fraud. Thornton's face turned pale. His lawyers exchanged nervous glances. They knew he was cornered. Thornton's face turned red with anger. His lawyers, who until that moment had maintained a facade of professionalism, now looked like cornered rats. But Thornton, far from accepting defeat, leaned forward and said to me in a menacing tone, "Listen, kid, I know you have evidence against me, but I warn you, if you go ahead with this, things will get very ugly for you and for that bitch Whitaker. Do you understand?" A chill ran down my spine. Thornton wasn't a man to be taken lightly. If I confronted him, I would be putting my life and Ellie's life in danger. But I couldn't back down now. I had come too far. "You don't intimidate me, Thornton," I replied, trying to keep calm. "I have copies of all the evidence. If anything happens to me or Mrs. Whitaker, they will be sent to the police and the press." Thornton let out a sardonic laugh. "Do you really think that scares me?" he said. "I have friends everywhere. I can make that evidence disappear, and I can make you and that woman disappear as well." The situation was tense. I needed an ace up my sleeve. And then I remembered something. A few weeks earlier, while investigating Thornton, I had come across a confidential report about an investment fund he managed, a fund he used to launder money from drug trafficking. It was the definitive proof, the one that would ruin him forever. "I think you're mistaken, Thornton," I said with a smile. "I have something else, something that not even your most powerful friends will be able to hide." I showed him the report. His face fell apart. He knew he had lost this time. He couldn't risk that information coming to light. It would be his end. Finally, Thornton gave in. He agreed to all of Ellie's demands, including an even larger compensation and a guarantee of safety for her and her children. Additionally, he promised to cooperate with authorities in the investigations into his criminal activities. A few weeks later, Thornton was arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including sexual abuse, corruption, tax fraud, and money laundering. He was sentenced to a long prison term, and his empire crumbled like a house of cards. Ellie and her children were able to rebuild their lives free from fear and misery. And I became a local hero, the lawyer who had defeated the monster. But more importantly, I had learned a valuable lesson sometimes. Sometimes to achieve justice, you have to risk everything.